Hi, this is Jessica Gaona. You may remember me as young B'Elanna Torres from Star Trek Voyager, and you're listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. On today's episode, we're speaking with Jessica Gaona, who you may remember best from the Star Trek Voyager episode, Lineage. There, she played a young version of B'Elanna Torres in an episode that dealt with Tom Paris and B'Elanna learning about their pregnancy, and Torres reliving a very rough memory from her childhood that left some scars on her as an adult. As it turns out in this discussion, we learned that Jessica also appeared in an early episode of Voyager that we're going to talk about, and has been in plenty of other kids shows on Nickelodeon as well as other programs in various roles. Jessica got into acting at a very young age, and ultimately, more or less I wouldn't say got out of it now, but has focused her life on other things. And by the way, this interview might be the first time she has spoken publicly about her time on Star Trek and acting in general for a very, very, very long time, maybe not since she was first on that episode of Voyager. So I'm very happy to say that this podcast had her first, and this episode of Trek Untold is truly one worthy of that untold mantle. But before we jump into our interview, I want to ask you, are you following Trek Untold on social media? It's the best way to keep up to date on who's going to be the next guest on Trek Untold and to learn all about the other cool things that are happening here. So if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, go ahead and look up Trek Untold, all one word, and give us a follow and a like. If you'd like to help support the show monetarily, go ahead and check out teespring.com/stores/trekuntold to check out some of the merchandise we have available. This includes t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, sweatshirts, stickers, and a whole bunch more. So go ahead and check out teespring.com/stores/trekuntold. You can also support our show by visiting patreon.com/trekuntold. If you become a paid subscriber to Trek Untold, you'll get first access to the show and a chance to ask our guests questions on future episodes. But most of all, please subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to it or watching it. And if you've already done that, please also leave a review and a rating if you can. Leaving ratings and reviews helps increase the visibility of podcasts on platforms like iTunes and other places like it. It shows that you're listening and that you like it, and that other people who are interested in the same subject are going to probably like it too. It helps us grow, it helps us get better guests, and it helps us keep bringing this amazing Trek Untold show to you. If you're already following us or have supported us in any other way, thank you, of course, for being a part of the Trek Untold family. There's a lot of Star Trek podcasts out there, and we're very grateful that you chose us to listen to. I'd also like to make a quick shout out to our friends at Triple Fiction Productions, who make some great 3D printed Star Trek inspired toys and replicas for fans of all ages and toys of all sizes. But you'll hear more about them a little later on in the show. Now, without further ado, let's beam up this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining us on the other side of the line, we've got Jessica Gaona. Jessica, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing all right. Thanks for joining us here on Trek Untold. This is the first time on the show you've actually spoke with anybody who was a child actress, so I'm pretty excited to be able to speak with someone who's got, I think, a pretty unique perspective on the entertainment industry. Now, for the most part, we've spoken to predominantly adults who are in the industry, or some who were children and continued in the industry. You eventually actually got out of acting, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on here. But yeah, it is pretty unique because the journey of a child actor tends to be a little bit different than that of an adult actor, someone going into it much later and when they're much more mature in their life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my mom put me into it kind of by happenstance growing up. Like I was about 9 years old when she found an ad and brought me and my sister to Hollywood to start going to auditions. And I really liked it growing up, but as I got into my teen years, I kind of pushed against it, and I got kind of tired of my mom saying, "Oh, my daughter was in Star Trek," and it's like I kind of wanted to move past that and have a normal life. And I actually ended up getting into like anime conventions and office work instead, which is a very different path. And like I do find myself missing the excitement of being on set and acting and getting into a character. That stuff I really miss doing. So I actually kind of started working that into projects recently, which is pretty funny. Pretty funny that this comes up actually, because it seemed like it was a distant memory for the last couple of years actually.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, everybody takes different journeys ultimately with what they do in their life. And I mean, even right now, this pandemic, I've kind of had to pivot with what I'm doing. I mean, that's kind of when I started this whole podcast, in fact,
Oh,
because everything's
really?
kind of changed. So, I can totally see that. And Did you actually want to always be an actress when you were a kid, or is that just because your mom kind of thrust you into that?
Uh, well, I was always a really expressive child, so I don't know. I mean, like I always like liked singing and acting it up, but like I didn't really like think of it as a profession. I didn't know that it was something that you could do, and um, I guess that's why my mom was like, "Well, this seems right up your alley. Let's go for it." Um, and I got an agent pretty quick, and I don't know. I guess I was just charming as a child. I don't really know how that works. I just know that people liked me and they wanted to see more of me, and I kept going back to like a lot of the same casting agents, and like it seemed like they kept trying to place me in things, but there was always like, oh, she's too small, or she doesn't know Spanish, or just like little things that don't quite sync up with my look and what people were going for. So um, I mean, the best thing that you could do nowadays is just make your own stuff to kind of counter that.
Absolutely, very good point. Yeah, it's really very much about these days being an entrepreneur for yourself. And he said we talked a little bit earlier off camera. You were talking about what your mom did before. You said she was an entrepreneur herself, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, she had a nationwide school business or school photography business where she sent different photographers all over the country to take pictures at different schools, and we would like we would do all the printing and mailing like from our house. So it was like a surprisingly large thing for what she'd put together like all by herself. So I just business has always been kind of in my mind as just something that you kind of always have to be working on, something that you always have to be, conceptualizing or putting together. So, like, I've always had my own art business on the side. Like, I do freelance artwork, and most recently, I've been doing artwork for the strongman community. Actually, I got into strongman sports. Like, I went to the Arnold Sports Festival this year, like right as the shutdown started happening. So they had an athletes and media only kind of setup, and uh, yeah, I did some filming there. Uh, that was just my own deciding to support my friends in the industry sort of thing. That kind of stemmed off from also doing artwork, which was I'm kind of trying to figure out how to market this as a whole in the future, because I do a lot of different things, and I just kind of like to be there and help with a lot of different things. And it's it's kind of hard settling on what to do when you have so many different skills and different experiences like along this like really wide scope of experiences. And it's like it's tough forgetting about how it is in Hollywood and how it is in the real world and how different those are. And it's like I definitely should be able to build something. It's just a matter of focusing in on what I want to build at this point.
I can definitely understand you from that point of view. Like before I was doing my YouTube channel, and definitely before I was doing this podcast, I covered mixed martial arts. I had a whole YouTube channel just for that. And
Oh
so
wow.
I also am an illustrator too. So like a lot of my thing in the beginning was I actually would do drawings of the fighters and like go to events and give it to them and
How
get autographs
fun.
on it. And like it's a really weird niche because yeah, like not many folks were doing drawings of UFC fighters. There's like about 4 or 5 of them, and I was one of those people that was doing it like professionally to some extent.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's definitely a market for what you're doing though, especially with the strongman. I know I've seen. It's been a while since I've looked at any fitness magazines, but I know like Evan Showman back in the day used to do drawings of, like Ronnie Coleman, and you get those printed all the time. So there's definitely a niche for that kind of stuff, but it's really interesting. But I think we'll come back to that stuff a little bit later on because I definitely want to talk to you about your illustration work.
Sure.
But this being Trek Untold, I'm curious since Star Trek was one of your earliest roles. Were you actually a fan of the series before you got on the show?
Definitely. Like as long as I could remember, my family and I would gather in the living room and watch it. And I remember, like, I didn't know all the characters' names or anything. I would have my own nicknames for the characters. And like to this day, I still don't know the actual names of a lot of the characters. I just know them by my. I won't go putting them out on the internet. But one of them I called Pretzel Head. Uh, yeah, I just named the characters myself and just kind of watched that way. I'm not really sure how that vibes with anybody else, but I was little and I wasn't very good at following the story. But it was very exciting to have that opportunity to actually be on it. Like I was 11 years old when I got the opportunity. So yeah, I was actually really into it at the time.
Your first appearance was actually on Deep Space Nine, right? In the episode for the uniform from season 5. Is that correct?
Um, I believe the episode was called Memorial. It was just a background thing that we had gotten through our we had this casting place called Kids Background Talent where they would just uh cast you by like height and skin tone and stuff like that. And they booked me and both of my sisters at the time, my older and my little baby sister, to be refugees, and they gave us all little quills on the sides of our head. No, they just had us running around as stuff was exploding. And so I didn't really know too much about what was going on there, but I just know that I had a whole lot of fun.
I mean, what can you remember about the set being that young? I mean, it must have been like a very big, crazy thing to see for the first time ever in acting.
Oh no, it was super cool because they had it in a big warehouse. They had those big giant warehouses that had different parts of the sets already built like in chunks in along the sides of the warehouse. They would have the hallways for the ship, and then in this other warehouse they would have they had this like war torn outdoor set with like drapes to cover up the background and like foggy lights, and it like looked like the outdoors. um and they were like, yeah, you're just gonna be running around and jumping over these rocks, and like it was really cool to see how they had rebuilt this like crazy swampy area uh like within that giant warehouse.
Do you remember who else was in that scene with you, or who might have been in the episode with you? Like, were any of the main stars of the show there on that day?
I believe Chakotay was in there, but I don't remember. Another one of the main characters was in that scene at the time, but there was only two of them at the time. Um, like Offset, I got to meet the actor who played Neelix. I think that's all I met at the first time around. I met a lot more when I did the guest starring role.
Yeah, it's neat that you mentioned that was actually a Voyager episode because I think Memory Alpha might have that wrong. They have you listed on DS9. I didn't realize you were in a different Voyager episode because I normally I like watch the episodes, I prepare for them, but now I'm like, oh well, I've watched the wrong episode.
Yeah, no, they were actually they were I think they were actually within the same year that they were filmed. It was something like a couple months apart, actually.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it looks like this episode you're talking about is from season 6, and I think the episode that you did, Lineage, that was season 7. So yeah, they were fairly close together then.
Cool, yeah.
You know, and besides Star Trek, I know you've done a lot of other things before that, and one of those was actually Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, right?
Oh gosh, that was a background thing as well. Like
Yeah.
I think my mom got on my page and started listing as many things as she could back in the day. I didn't do a whole lot of acting roles that required me to be too close to the camera. Like I have a role on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide where I had like a total of 3 words that I repeated 3 times. Um, I have a small, um, 2 small independent movie roles where I was like the main little girl. One of them was a kidnapped girl. The other one was a girl who owned a cat. For like these little Sundance, uh, like film festival movies. But for the most part, it was mostly background work, which I swear I was doing like 3 times a week at minimum back in when I first started doing that years ago. And I'll still go back to do it from time to time, like if a job comes out that I can fit into my schedule. But I haven't done it in like I haven't done anything Hollywood based in like a year or so.
Yeah, I also saw looking through your resume that you did a lot of stuff with Nickelodeon also. You were on like the Amanda Show, you were on All That. You mentioned
Oh,
Ned's Declassified.
constantly.
Yeah.
Like they had us as like constant audience members, or like in the Judge Trudy skits in the Amanda Show, they had like a set amount of kids who would be in the jury or in the audience in the scene a couple times within the same season. So they would keep calling us back for the same sets. It was pretty cool. I think I did multiple episodes of all that in the same way. Um, I think I was even in one of the opening sequences. Like they had us like throwing cameras around and like flashing the cameras everywhere. So I might be able to find myself in one of those. Yeah, I spent a lot of time at the Nickelodeon studios. It was really fun.
So you're doing a lot of background work at this point. Were you trying to get any larger roles? Did more? You mentioned you did some stuff with the Sundance shows, but were you like gunning for any bigger parts in any of the Nickelodeon shows, or was it for the most part you just pretty content doing the
Wish.
background work?
I wish. Like I did so many auditions, but like I said, like there was always something wrong. Like I remember I really was hoping to get the role in there was a role in Hannah Montana, like her best friend. No, sorry, this one was Lizzie Mcguire and Lizzie Mcguire, the best friend in Lizzie Mcguire is the part that I was auditioning for. And like, I was really stoked to go for this role because it was like everything I wanted to display in my personality. And they like told my parents straight up, we love her, but she is just too short.
Did you have a lot of friends who were doing acting as well at that same time, or was that kind of like one world and then another world was like your actual friends in your school life?
I actually was homeschooled, so I didn't have too much of a social life going on as a kid. I liked to write on the computer and I liked to read, and I spent a lot of my time drawing, and that was most of my life. I got to kind of self-direct my studying, which was just I ended up getting into coding, and that's played into my adult life now as I work as a coder. Um, and it's I don't know, I guess it was a pretty easy process. I'm glad my mom kind of planned it out that way, because I don't know how I would have done in public school. I'm a little bit of I'm definitely a lone wolf in my personality. um, I don't get along with too many people at a time. I just kind of like to keep to myself and create stuff, and it's I'll leave a lot of things unread because I'm just kind of in my own world, kind of making my own stuff. So it's not too bad.
Well,
I'm
that's
gonna
the
live
artist
a little
journey.
at a time, but it's the artist life.
Exactly.
Trek Untold will return momentarily. Trek Untold is brought to you by Triple Fiction Productions. If you're a Star Trek cosplayer looking for props, or a toy collector looking to spice up your shelves, Triple Fiction Productions has you covered. Triple Fiction Productions produces affordable and unique 3D printed Trek-inspired products from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the movies. You can expect the same amount of care and attention to detail in any of the items in their catalog, whether it's a prop replica for use in a fan film, or a part of a cosplay, or accessories and playsets for figures from Playmates, Migos, or Diamond Select. Own your very own tricorder or phaser rifle with working lights, the bridge of the Enterprise E for your Playmates figures, or any other item from countless species and ships from the Star Trek universe. All products are 3D printed in the USA and are constantly evolving and improving based on fan feedback. To learn more about their products, visit them at triple-fictionproductions.net or on Facebook at facebook.com/triplefictionproductions. Triple Fiction Productions, taking Star Trek where no 3D printer has gone before.
Hi, my name is Walker Brandt, and I was privileged to play the role of Cadet Hajar in the episode The First Duty, Star Trek: The Next Generation. I was also a guest on Trek Untold a few months ago, and during my interview with Matt, I introduced my new book, Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence. The dedication in Awaken reads to the human spirit, the final frontier within. I'm a Trekkie, I'm a fan, and I have always believed that the final frontier is our unlimited imagination. And the reason I wrote my book is to support the reader, to always remember that when you combine your unlimited imagination with your innocence, that playfulness as a child where you had no fear about the unknown. In fact, every single day you woke up into the unknown and you wanted to explore. That's been my journey. And that's how I believe that we change our reality for the better together, because we're all creators and we're all explorers. So I ask you, what excites you? How will you expand and go where you've never been before? What steps will you take to embrace the unknown? So Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence, is there to support the reader, to share my journey, to let you know you're not alone, to let you know that if you've been through challenges and difficulties and times in your life where you felt like you just couldn't go on, I've been there with you. And this book is there for you, to encourage you to keep getting back up and moving forward into the adventure. So I hope you have a chance to read it. It's titled Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence, and it's available on Amazon. And it's a #1 international bestseller. So I hope you get a chance to get on that journey with me. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me at walkerbrandt.com or on my social media, Facebook, Instagram. Thanks so much, and I hope we get a chance to connect.
We now return to Trek Untold.
So let's chat a bit, Jessica, about your time in Star Trek Voyager one more time, because you were in another episode, which was Lineage. That was season 7,
Uh,
and you were young B'Elanna Torres. So at that point, again, we're talking, this is the end of Voyager. Had you watched any of that series before?
just a bit here and there, so like not enough to understand the overarching stories, but I actually did go back and watch Lineage not that long ago, this year actually. And I didn't realize that it was so heavy in all the messaging that it was delivering, and I like to be part of that message was like, I can't believe I didn't realize this before.
Hey, it's a very deep, very good episode also. Do you remember much about the auditioning process for that episode?
um I do remember enjoying going back to Paramount multiple times, and like I drew pictures for the casting agents every time I sat in there, and it seemed very friendly along every single step of the way, and like that was kind of a different vibe than any other auditioning that I had done before. So like that's really the most that I noticed about it, is that everyone just seemed really nice and happy, and I was like, oh, they don't seem disappointed. I like this. Great. um and I do remember that the material in the scenes, like she has her frustration with her parents, and I felt like being homeschooled at the time, like I kind of had that kind of frustration to get out myself, like, oh, I don't have a social life because I have to stay at home, or that I kind of like used that scene to kind of work with those feelings as a kid, which I guess was exactly what they were looking for. And yeah, I didn't realize that I'd made that connection as a kid, which is pretty cool. Like I totally saw it when I went back and saw and watched that scene. I was like, oh, hey, cool. Method acting. I like it.
Yeah, it was a very good choice you made. I think it's a very mature decision also for such a young actress to make, and to actually have that scene resonate with yourself too. Because it basically discusses bullying in some ways. Us also about absentee
Yeah.
parents. So there's a lot of complicated feelings in that one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that my parents actually took me out of school was because the schools that they were going to merge my school with another school where I guess at this other school there had been some pretty severe bullying episodes, like in the girls' restrooms and stuff like that. So my parents didn't want me, like I was like one of the smallest kids in school, in my elementary school, and I was also one of the smartest kids. So like add glasses and just you just give yourself that's a prime target. So my mom didn't want to put me in this other school. She was afraid that I was going to get a really hard time. And I don't blame her. I don't blame her. It
Now,
was
was
very
this the
quirky.
was this the first time you ever wore prosthetics for a part?
I guess it would be the second time, because of the first episode, the memorial, they had the little side ridges, but for this one they actually did like a full face cast with like the little straws up my nose, and they had to make multiple molds of that forehead, so they had like my whole face casted and stuff. That was really cool. That was like my favorite experience of movie making, hands down.
That's really cool, because I know I've talked to a lot of people who are adult actors who had to do that whole process of getting the makeup done, and they were just like getting real claustrophobic, real freaked out. You were okay
Oh,
with it?
super fun, come on.
So for you, it was just a walk in the park.
If you have fears to associate with that, then maybe. But no, I was just like, yes, silly putty, yes, let's do this.
So how many days was the shoot that you did? Do you remember?
I think they had me on set for about a week actually, because they used the first couple of days to test the makeup and to like run some lighting, and to also bank some schooling hours, because when you're under 18 you have to do some schooling hours on set, and you can bank them in advance so that you can use the later days for shooting instead of any more school time, because you're supposed to do 3 hours per day. So I think they had me do like 6 hours for the first 3 days, and then they had me shooting for the last few days. It was really nice, because you got to hang out with some of the regular cast during the lunch breaks. I do remember everyone was like kind of spread out though, like everybody kind of like came in, got their lunch, and kind of went and sat in other places, so it looked like everybody kind of had their little rituals and stuff. It was pretty cute to notice.
Yeah, I was actually wondering if you got to spend any time with the main cast, because your parts of that episode are very much away from all of them. You're basically in this little campground area, and
Yeah.
none of their cast regulars are there. But did you actually get to hang out or meet any other folks? Like, especially, I'm wondering if you got to meet Roxann Dawson, who plays adult B'Elanna.
Oh, I definitely did. Like we got a picture together after my makeup test on one of the days. But most of them I only saw in passing. Like I got to see the doctor while I was getting some snacks at the craft table. I think I 7 of 9 was in the makeup trailer as I was getting my hair tested or something like that. Because like I remember just talking to her casually, and when she left, my mom was like, "Do you know who that was? That's Jerry Ryan." So yeah, it's like I didn't as a kid I didn't really have too much connection of like who was who as a real person versus an actor versus a character in the series. So like it was cool to have those really like casual interactions with everybody. And looking back, it's really a blessing to have those.
Yeah, it sounds really fun. I mean, I know I'd be freaking out if I was in that doing that kind of stuff and seeing those kinds of people. I am kind of curious though about that makeup process you went through. So you were there for a full week doing that. How long were you in the makeup chair each day?
I think it was an hour each day because they had to. First they actually had to spend an hour braiding my hair because my hair was always really long. So they had several makeup artists braiding my hair, and they would put it up, and they would put the wig or they would put a bald cap over that, and then they would put the forehead and a wig on top of that. So there was like I think it was like 2.5 hours actually.
I mean, that's a lot for someone young. Even for an adult, that sounds like a nightmare. But for someone young, that's got to be a real pain. Like, what did you do
Oh, I
to
thought
keep
it was
yourself?
super fun. I
You
loved
enjoyed
it
it.
every time. Like I mean, I was like, for me, it's like it was attention. I was like, yes, I love it. Nothing quite like it.
Now, did you ever get any input from any of the actors? Like, did Roxanne ever tell you, do the scene this way because this is more like my character, or were you kind of just free to explore your interpretation of this character?
Oh, I was definitely free to do it all on my own. They just kind of like let me loose out there.
Do you remember much about the director for this episode? He was Peter Lortson, by the way. Do you remember how he was with kids?
Oh, I remember liking him a lot.
That's good. That's a positive.
But like not too much more about that. Like I just remember the general friendliness, and like I enjoyed working with him, and I hope to come back and work more. Like I was like hoping that I could come back and have like a secret background role or something like that because I just really enjoyed being on the set with everybody. Everyone was super nice. I loved it.
And was the Voyager set much different from other sets you'd been on at that point?
Oh, definitely. Because like the first thing that I noticed is that there's this giant velvet like screen that's just endless, that's covered in sparkly stars. And it's like it's something that you just kind of want in your own house. This beautiful backdrop. And it's like I don't know, it's just it's I definitely didn't do too many space movies or TV shows. Like I did a lot of high school type sets because there's like a general age group that they tend to keep bringing in for certain things. I was either a kidnapped child or a school student most of the time. So being outside of that in any way, shape, or form is already pretty unusual. Nothing compares to those sets. I wish I could have done something similar since then, but nothing like I still don't have a similar comparison.
Now, did you watch that episode when it first aired?
Oh, definitely. We had like a little viewing party. I brought my best friend over to my house, like pop popcorn. We're all, it was before internet viewing, so we all plopped down in front of the TV at the scheduled time and had to wait through the commercials and everything. But yeah, it was fun. It took like I think it was 9 months before the episode came out, like between filming and being on TV. So we had a lot of time to wait.
That sounds like TV, yeah. So you talked a little bit earlier about how you just had watched this episode again fairly recently, but do you remember what you thought about it back then? And can you tell us a little bit more about how you feel about it today?
Oh, how I feel about it today. I mean, I definitely noticed that it was a heavily emotional episode. Like I didn't realize that the older me character was going to be trying to decide what she's going to do with her child to that level. Because like in my life, that's something that I kind of started thinking about, like what would my children be like in the future. And when I was having that train of thought, I just happened to watch that episode at the same time, and I was just like, wow, okay. So it kind of hit me at a different level. Like, would you change your child if you could? And there's other parts about it though. Noticing how I applied my emotion as a kid to her situation, being bullied and having her mom being talked about behind her back, and like I didn't realize it was that deep until looking back at it as an adult. Like as a child, it didn't really seem like an out of the ordinary situation. It just seemed like that's the kind of stress that everybody talks about. But looking back at it as an adult, I actually realized that's a pretty deep thing to explore. Like I can't um I guess it's a little bit of a weighty subject to bring into this interview, I guess.
Well, we like to delve deep. I mean, I can tell you my own personal experiences with Star Trek. It's, I watched as a kid growing up also, and I kind of fell out of the fandom for many years and only got back into it probably really hardcore last 5 years or so. And rewatching
Oh
episodes
yeah.
I remember seeing as a kid, like I just watched one which is from The Next Generation called Skin of Evil. And it's one where one of the main characters in the show dies.
Oh
And
gosh.
and yeah, and she's gone for good. So just recently I lost a friend, in fact, and just like watching that again, it's like it hit me real hard. More so watching they do like a funeral at the end of the episode, and I'm like, oh wow, the things
Oh
she's saying,
gosh.
it's like it resonates so differently as an adult. So I'm glad that you have had some kind of
Yeah.
like deeper experience with the show.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I did rewatch it recently because like I didn't realize that there was that much going on when I was watching this growing up. So like it'll be a trip to go back and rewatch it when I make time for it in the future because I definitely want to have like a whole series watched through now. Haven't done it yet, but
Well, I
no,
hope you
I'm
do.
waiting for the right time and the right company.
Well, I hope you do get to check it out one more time and take it from the beginning. But one last Star Trek question: did you get to audition for any other roles in the franchise?
Oh, I didn't, unfortunately. I hoped for it, I wished, I prayed, but no, that was all I got. But I'm happy to have had it.
It's an excellent role, very memorable episode, and really good one for that season. Also, it's a season full of really good ones, but that one in particular, it's a real emotional standout. So,
It's hard.
so we kind of alluded a little bit earlier in this interview why you kind of got out of acting, but can you kind of expand on that and just tell us why you basically decided to move on from that as your full time career and to pursue other interests?
Well, like I said, I actually got into anime conventions really big. I got into this group of friends who into Japanese anime and all things related, and my interest just kind of shifted from making things to kind of more of a consumeristic standpoint. And I started wanting to like make cosplays and just buy figurines and cover my walls with cute anime stuff. um and I just wanted more of a casual, like, don't mind me, let me just do what I want sort of existence. And I kind of went off in that direction as well. But in the same vein, I started doing artwork. Like I noticed that there was booths at these anime conventions where people were selling their artwork, and I thought, well, it would be amazing if I could go to these and sell my artwork at these so that I can, enjoy both sides of it. So I started doing that for like a good like 8 years. So I started doing that at anime conventions, and I later transitioned onto the fighting game community, where I actually got pretty well known for drawing all the Street Fighter males gender bent as females. So I had this collection of them as cute pinup girls, which actually uh, sold a lot throughout the years. And as that gained popularity, so did the entire fighting game community platform, like Evo, which is this summit for fighting games in Vegas, basically the world summit of fighting games. If you're good at fighting games, you go to Vegas and battle it out at in July. I used to be the only artist there, but then they started bringing in the show got bigger and bigger. They had to get bigger and bigger hotels. They started bringing more and more tables, and I just kind of blended in with everybody else. So I kind of stopped going to those, and now I'm just a little office lady. I kind of like went on this wild trip, like around into like crazy fandom and then back, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, now I think I kind of want to get back into movies. Maybe I'll do that.
And why not? Hey, I've seen some of your work. Though. I found your YouTube channel. I found some of your social as well. And I've seen some of your artwork, and it's really wonderful stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Do you work in Manga Studio? Is that the program you're drawing in?
No, I use a Adobe Photoshop and then just like a regular pen and pencil any other time.
What's your preferred medium? Do you prefer to work in digital or traditional?
Well, I love digital because it's a lot easier to clean up. Less mess. But I really love painting like larger scale things. I started doing that in more recent years, and like I kind of have to take off an entire day for it, like set aside a day off to paint. It feels like a job almost in itself to actually invest that much into it. Yeah, I'm really torn. It's like a 50-50 between the two. I love it all as long as it's a chance to express.
So is there like a manga or an anime that was like super influential to you and your style?
Ooh, to my style, not so much. I think actually what's influential to my style is the fact that like I grew up on like Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera and Cartoon Network, and then I also like started bringing in these anime influences. So my work is kind of a mix of American cartoon and anime. It's kind of like it's a little bit of a mashup between the two. And whenever I draw something, it kind of fluctuates between the two as well. Sometimes it'll look a little bit more realistic. Sometimes it'll look a little bit more anime. Sometimes it'll look a bit more like American cartoony. Sometimes it'll be super cartoony. But there's not really like a set style anymore, which is weird. Like I'm kind of, it seems like I come up with something new every time I draw now. So um, I think I need to kind of tighten that back in to find a style again as well. But it's kind of fun too. Because like I'm actually working on setting this up towards I like the idea of patterned fitness clothing. Because that kind of relates into what I'm doing now. I'm like really into the fitness stuff. I got into strongman because I started competing in it myself as well. So like I like the idea of team-based patterned fitness clothing that kind of, if you want to go to the gym with somebody, it's kind of cool to have like matching clothes. I mean, I don't know if anybody would be into that, but like I want to put my designs together into patterns that kind of speak to this crowd if it's out there. We'll see how it goes. But I got to give it some time. I'm still conceptualizing on that.
Oh, I think it sounds like a really good idea. I hope you can find a way to manifest it because there's certainly a market for that. And
Definitely.
like this, during this whole pandemic, especially, like this is kind of the time to reinvent yourself and to take the chances. And it sounds like you kind of know what you're doing to some extent too. You've got that entrepreneurial background; it's in your blood as well. So it sounds like it's a great opportunity.
I got a huge wall of post-its, that's for sure.
Did any of the lessons you learned in acting cross over into your artwork?
I honestly kind of crossed over into sales.
I think that counts.
Because like doing the artist alley tables, I'd have my prints, and like you're technically trying to sell your work on a piece of paper for $20. And that's not exactly something that people go through their lives necessarily needing. And it's not necessarily something that I know how to like push on anybody either. So like I don't know, I guess I kind of would always try to kick into an acting mode whenever I would go out for a day of sales and just try to be more engaging that way. And that would be a counter to my intensely shy, self-conscious, like I don't think anybody actually wants this type of demeanor that I would usually have. So technically it's actually kind of a skill that you're able to kind of like switch on as needed, because in moments like that, like you don't really have if you want to be making sales and you don't think anybody's going to be coming to your table, well, you kind of have to switch on. You kind of have to start like reaching out to people. You kind of have to be engaging, and if that's not your personality normally, then darn. You gotta figure it out. So it technically helps in that way. I'm just in general daily life trying to be a better person in general. I mean, yeah, I do actually have to kind of switch on that skill actually, because you don't really have that going on too much when you're all like introverted and in your
Oh
own
yeah,
little world. It's not a default thing.
fake it till you make it, basically.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's so much of a faking it. Maybe the enthusiasm for doing it might be a bit of a stretch, but like it's still pulling that bit of enthusiasm that you do have out of yourself. So it's like you kind of gotta have something to work with. I don't. The thing I can't do is I can't work with anything I don't actually have. So it's like, I think that would be a key element to faking it, is if I don't actually have it within me. But you know.
That's basically acting, is finding what's in you and pulling it out of yourself anyway. So it's basically the same world.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were into the strongman stuff, and I think I saw online that you did a Spartan race also. So are
Oh
you
yeah, I did a bunch of those.
so are you competing in strongman competitions as well?
I actually just competed in one last weekend. I got second place in the lightweight novice division of the 805 strongest man and woman. What actually happened there was there wasn't a whole lot of people joining the lightweight women's category, so they kind of mashed everybody into one category, and they kind of drew a line at one weight class and moved some people up and some people down. And luckily, I'd been training with the bigger weights, so I did pretty okay. But there's one event that I still need to figure out a little bit better, and that's this completely different thing called Moss wrestling, and that's kind of a tiebreaker sport that they add in there for more entertainment. More entertainment and challenge. It's pretty cool.
I've never heard of Moss wrestling. Is it actually you wrestling with someone else?
Kind of. It's so what it is
Really?
is Moss wrestling is where there's a board between you and your opponent, and you're both wrestling over this stick. You're both wrestling over a stick. And you place your feet against the board in between you, and you basically have this tug of war between you and your opponent to get that stick out of, or pull your opponent over the board. And that's actually like in the works too. I believe they're trying to get it into the Olympics right now. But it's pretty cool because it's a lot more technique based than you would think. Like I can deadlift a lot more than some of the women that I was up against, but because I guess I wasn't quite awake enough when I started Moss wrestling on Sunday morning, because my legs weren't really waking up. So I got pulled over pretty fast by girls who were struggling with picking up the same weight that I could just pick up really fast the day before. Um, so like it's a it's surprisingly complex, but it goes by really fast too. And it's really cool to be able to test your strength against other people in that way. So I really hope to see this sport grow. But yeah, it's just one part of this whole strength sport stuff that I got into.
So you mentioned that you've done anime conventions, you've done gaming conventions, but have you ever been to a Star Trek convention yet?
I did. I went to one Star Trek convention right after my episode actually. It was right after the episode aired. So I believe it had to be in 2002, I believe. I actually had gone up on stage with Roxann Dawson after she had auctioned off like some old foreheads from another episode, and had a little bit of a photo opportunity while we were there. And I got her to sign like a little action figure for me that I bought of her. But that's the only one that I went to. It was a very, very short day, but it was pretty cool.
So we got to tell Scott to get you to the next one, because I know fans would love to actually meet you. And, Trek fans always love meeting people they haven't met before. So we need to get you back out there in the world again with conventions once conventions do reopen.
Oh, I'd love to. I miss them.
So, Jessica, last question for you today. What is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Well, it's like Scott actually said, you're actually a part of history. Like it's really cool to look back and know that I'm a part of something that was such a huge part of culture. And like it was such a huge part of my life growing up, and such a big part of my family's life. And like just getting to have a place in it is just it's a really cool blessing.
So, Jessica, thank you so much for chatting with us today. It's great to hopefully reconnect you with Star Trek fans again. And like I said, we want to get you back into the convention scene, not just anime, not just gaming, but we got to get you to Star Trek Vegas at some point. So,
I
Scott,
would
please make it happen.
Yes, please.
So, Jessica, how do our listeners today find out more about you, and how do they find ways to take a look at your artwork?
I'm not too active on a lot of channels right now. Your best bet is going to be following me on Instagram. My handle on there is Alpaca Party. Long story. But yeah, Alpaca Party. I just launched my website, Alphabet Creative, which is going to be a source for like just all sorts of different creative work. So that's kind of in the works. So, we'll see how it develops over time. But those are going to be the best bets.
I think you're going to have a lot of very excited Trekkies reaching out to you. So I hope you're going to have some Star Trek art ready by the time this interview pops up.
Sure thing. I should get on that.
All right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your time. It's been great. And yeah, live long and prosper, as they say.
Live long and prosper.
And that was our chat with Jessica Gaona, who I thank again for doing this interview with me, since I imagine it's not necessarily something she gets asked often. I mean, let's face it, it's not every day that a crazed Trekkie contacts you to talk about a show you haven't thought about in decades. So really, big shout out to Jessica, and best of luck to you in your next fitness competition. The episode Lineage was originally intended to be titled Inner Child, and Roxann Dawson said that she cried when she read the script for the first time. This is also one of the few Star Trek episodes to flash back to the past to show a younger version of a character. The original Star Trek animated series did it early on in the show, where we saw a young version of Spock on Vulcan, and Discovery has done it most frequently, particularly in Season 2, with the child versions of Michael Burnham and, once again, oddly enough, Spock. But this time he's without his pet. And arguably, while this one isn't exactly a flashback, the most notable time that Star Trek brought in child actors to play their younger counterparts was in the 6th season TNG episode, Rascals. That episode saw 12-year-old versions of Picard, Ro, Keiko, and Guinan. But again, the difference is that it wasn't a flashback. Instead, it was that their bodies had somehow turned into their child versions of themselves, retaining all of their memories and mental capabilities of them as if they were still adults. So while there's no Star Trek version of the Muppet Babies just yet, there is a lot of new Star Trek shows on deck for the next few years, so you never know what's going to happen next. So that wraps up this week's episode of Trek Untold. Thank you so much for checking it out this week. Please make sure that you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Trek Untold. That's one word, no spaces, at Trek Untold. It's the best way to get updates on guests, check out all the memes and other things that we're posting, and interact with myself and other Star Trek fans. If you'd like to support this podcast, go ahead and check out patreon.com/TrekUntold and become a subscriber to the show. Or check out teespring.com/stores/TrekUntold to check out some of our merchandise. If you've been enjoying Trek Untold, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/nerdnewstoday. Leaving ratings, reviews, and comments are things that all help this podcast grow, and they'll cost you nothing but a few seconds of your time. Doing things like that, or even telling your friends or other Star Trek fans about the stuff you've heard on the show and making sure they know about us, are huge helps to keeping Trek Untold growing. Thank you once again to our sponsor, Triple Fiction Productions. Go ahead and check them out at triple-fictionproductions.net. If you'd like to send us some feedback about this episode, suggest a guest, or ask to be booked on the show, go ahead and send me an email at trekuntold@gmail.com. And of course, thanks to listeners like you for choosing Trek Untold and making it your weekly Star Trek podcast. This has been Trek Untold. I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and until next time, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the Rageworks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.